Good evening and welcome to History on Your Doorstep here on Bro Radio with me, Graham Loveluck-Edwards. In tonight's programme, we see dead people. I am here with Nic Hodges, who many of you will know from the Victorian Barry Experience and the various walks that he does around the cemeteries in Barry. And we're going to be talking a little bit about what goes on in those walks. We're going to be talking about the places where they take place. We're going to be talking about some personal stories of some of the people who are buried there. And we're also going to be getting a flavour of what the cemetery scene is in Barry to guide us through all of that. Nic, great to have you back, Nic. How's life been treating you recently?
Pretty good, yeah, keeping busy.
Beautiful. And the walk's busy?
The walks are very busy. Every walk we book, either around the town or in the cemetery itself, just seem to book up very, very quickly.
Oh, fantastic.
And we keep getting asked for more and more, and we're doing our best.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, look, if anyone's inspired from what they hear on tonight's show to get in touch, you therefore need to get in touch quickly, because these things do sell out very, very quickly. So, Nic, let's kind of step back and look at what it is that you're doing with your walks. I mean, how many different cemeteries are there of note in Barry, and what is it about them that's notable?
Right. Well, you've got to realise, first of all, there's a difference between a cemetery and a graveyard.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah. Well, straight off I'm learning.
It's a simple one. Churches, so it's established churches, if they have burial places by them, that's a graveyard.
Right.
A cemetery tends to be a burial place that is owned or run by a municipality, in other words, a council. Wow. So the main one in Barry, Merthyr Dyfan, is a cemetery.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, straight off, not a clue.
So we've got the main one at Merthyr Dyfan.
Yeah.
We have the defunct one next to the King Billy, of course, which is in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Which, because it's defunct, comes under the local burial board, effectively, which is Barry Town Council. We look after it, and that's open for walks if anyone wants to contact the council, and we'll gladly take you round. That really is it for cemeteries in the town, but of course a lot of the churches do have a semblance or an old graveyard sort of thing. Right,
I see. Yeah. And I take it you're more involved with the cemeteries than the churchyards?
Yeah, the churches themselves look after their churchyards.
That's what
the cemetery, I'm the chairman of the committee that looks after the cemeteries, so that's what we do. Yeah.
I get you. So looking at them in isolation then, Philadelphia, defunct, what does that actually mean that it's defunct?
Well, it was a small chapel in Cadoxton, Baptists, and before they moved on to bigger and better in the town, and they had about 20 burial spaces attached to it. It's you can't bury there anymore. In fact, there's no building there anymore, so you've got the outline of the original chapel, and you've then got the various gravestones that have been, shall I say, rearranged there.
Right.
And then it's walled off and gated and shut, but we open it for anyone who wants to come and have a look. The beautiful thing was, being Baptists, obviously they were into baptism in big time,
right?
And they used to use the local Cadoxton stream which ran alongside to baptise them.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
So what sort of period of history was that used then?
Oh, 1840s, 50s, so well before the docks.
Before the town and got to it.
Before Cadoxton was very much, I mean, it was a very small chapel building.
Yeah. And how long was it in use for?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question.
Are we talking hundreds of years?
Oh, no, probably a good 60, 70 or something like that.
Okay.
But they moved on because as the population grew, they wanted to be more in the centre of things, and they wanted to tap into the new incoming population as well. So they moved on and upwards.
And hence the much larger site of Merthyr Dyfan, which where the majority of your walks take place, I understand.
Absolutely. The difference, of course, is that we stepped in. I say we. I'll give you the history of how it started.
Yeah, please.
It started off in 1887, so whilst they were still building the first dock, with a meeting of the Rural Sanitary Board.
Oh, right.
And they said, if you want to build a new cemetery to look after all these new people that will come into the town and eventually need a cemetery, you need to set up a burial board. And they decided to do that, but the worthies that did that, there was no form of real local government at the time.
Yeah.
The council didn't start up until 1894 in the area, so they decided they needed to get together and effectively buy land. And to do that, they had to set up as a burial board. And to do that, they had to make the case to the ratepayers.
Right.
And a lot of the local ratepayers said, I'm not paying for that. The new docks, which will supply the town with huge amounts of income and money, can pay for that. And the local worthies at the time, many who went on to be our first councillors and first chairs of the council, said, no, let's do it now. We need it now. And they were quite right. And then, of course, the cemetery was planned, operated and opened then in the September of 1889.
Right, okay. It's pretty quick then. They managed to get
Well,
their
they had
act
to be.
together
They had
very
to be.
quick.
Well, it was very small.
Yeah.
It was very small. If you look at the late Victorian maps of the town, it's the chapel, which was there and still there, with a very small space. It's grown like Billy O since then, of course.
Yeah.
It's 75 acres now.
Good
Yeah,
grief.
second largest cemetery in Wales.
Well, good heavens above. And what is it, I mean, what is there at the cemetery that might take people by surprise? I mean, the size is clearly a great starting point, but what sort of things will you come across if you go there and you think,
Well,
good Lord?
The chapel itself is gorgeous. It was built in 1893, so 4 years after the cemetery opened. The council, the burial board, which was just about to become the council, said, we'll hold fire a bit in case the cemetery doesn't take off.
Because people have a choice on these things.
Well, the thing was that the churchyards, which were exclusively the place to bury at the time, were becoming full.
Right.
And that was before the numbers had really taken off of the population. I mean, there is an apocryphal story of a gravedigger who was employed at the old church in Cadoxton, and he had the job of cutting the grass and digging any graves sort of thing. And he had been complaining that the churchyard was filling up, and he was set to task of digging a new grave. And he went in, and first spade went in, and crunch, it went through the neck of a body that had already been buried because of its fullness. And supposedly he found out later that it was the body of his own father.
Oh, wow.
So you then had a rush of applications through various acts of parliament to close certain churchyards to new burials.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the churches didn't like it because they were losing income.
Yeah, of course.
But it was recognised it was the only way forward.
Wow. So we've got this move because Barry has gone from being a couple of little hamlets to this massive town with this huge sort of immigrant population. People have flooded in from all different directions. All when I say immigrant, I don't necessarily mean overseas, although they did come from overseas, all over the place to work there. There needs to be something to cater for what happens when they shuffle off the mortal coil. So this was the solution. So once that had kicked off, that is you have this large cemetery, it starts to be used. We're in the Victorian era, and the Victorians have got the very clear idea about pretty much everything. They like to put their stamp on everything. So I'm assuming there's a large part of the cemetery which is full of Victorian memorials and sort of things that are antique to us now looking back. What sort of styles and things do we find? What sort of things do we see there that are relatively uncommon?
We have the older sections and we have the newer sections. When we do the walks, we only take them around the older sections because it's a bit irreverent.
Of course,
new stuff, but also the older stuff tends to be a bit more interesting. The Victorians were very maudlin. They loved their sense of mourning. It was. I mean, Victoria herself sort of brought in a lot of this style and everything. But you get a sense with the memorials that are there from that date, and a lot of them were quite picturesque. They wanted to represent something. And if you're going to spend sometimes a substantial amount of money on a ornate and sexy gravestone, you want it to show exactly your feelings. So there was this imagery that was brought forward. So you've obviously got crosses, and you've got crosses of every type. You've got Maltese type crosses, you've got Celtic crosses, you've got plain crosses, you've got straight crosses, you name it. And that obviously was the Christian part of it. Then angels became very popular, and they always looked very serene and mournful. they symbolise spirituality, guidance, and a hope of resurrection in the afterlife. And of course, an interesting thing is angels aren't supposed to have belly buttons.
There's a detail I'd not considered.
Because of course they weren't born.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Not that I think I've ever seen
No,
an angel's
but it's
belly
a
button,
great
but,
bit of. Yes, I love where
then
that's going.
You had doves and birds, which were purity and peace, and carrying olive branches. You've got the beautiful one I always like is broken columns. So you've got like a nice round, straight column.
Yeah.
But it looks like it's been vandalised and broken off. And basically, I get asked, "Oh, what a shame! That beautiful thing has been broken." No, I say it was built like that because it symbolised a life cut short. So it tended to be a younger person who might have died in a horrible accident or of a horrible illness.
So there's a whole code written into all of these memorials.
Willows, hourglasses, skulls and skeletons, all the different flowers, forget-me-nots, passion flowers, that sort of thing. Inverted torches.
Right.
So
what does that mean?
A life snuffed out.
So it's like the secret language. There used to be a secret language
they're quite bad puns, some of them.
Yeah,
you know, yeah.
Well, obituaries used to have a secret language. Like if it said burnt the candle from both ends, that generally meant alcoholic,
bit of a boy,
alcoholic, things like that.
Yeah.
So I didn't realise there's a whole code hidden away in, because I knew about, is it what's it called?
Memento Mori.
That's yes. So where you have skulls.
Remember, you will die.
Yeah.
Yeah, very maudlin thing, but it was supposed to wake people up to their own eventual demise and try and make them a better person. So, skulls.
Have we got those in Barry?
A couple.
Because I remember I used to live in Monmouthshire, a little tiny village called Redwick, and there is an example of exactly that, just by one of the church walls. And of course, every child who grew up in Redwick was told that was the pirate's grave, and because it just that's what it looks like. It looks like that. Yeah. But it's a fascinating, because that's got that the whole code of that is around the reminding you of the transient transition, how transitional life is, and. Well, remarkable stuff. So have we got any truly unique examples in Merthyr Dyfan?
We've got some very rare ones, actually. There are two beautiful, slender Celtic crosses out of granite.
Okay.
Now, granite, hard as hell, must have been an absolute swine to make, sort of thing. And they were both for young single women who were mourned, I think, either by their future loves and husbands or their new husbands, sort of thing. The artistry in those are beautiful, and they will last forever.
Wow.
They really, really will. They're superb. Not far from the entrance there's a cube.
Yes.
Which is balanced, and it's sort of, there's a symbolism to that which is a bit debated, but it's sort of like we point in all directions at all times, or so. I'm not too sure about that one.
Okay,
but it's a fascinating one, and it just seems like, what's that? You know, it's fascinating. We've got some beautiful angels up there.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You can see the styles change as you go through the dates.
Yeah.
Because obviously there was a new style or pattern coming in for the monumental masons, and people said, "Oh, I'll have that one, thank you," or that. And you can see it as it changes and a superstition.
Oh, let's have that.
This is general, I've found, to most cemeteries I've come across, and I've visited quite a few.
Right.
And it certainly holds true in Merthyr Dyfan. Believe it or not, it was considered, imagine you're setting up, a cemetery has to set up at some time, and someone has to be first.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And it was considered unlucky to be the first. I mean, you're dead.
I was going to say, not a lot you can do about it. But
it was considered unlucky. So what they did is, and I've found this in about 10 or 12 cemeteries I've been to, they actually looked and wanted a foreigner.
Oh, right.
Because if it's going to be unlucky, let it be a foreigner.
No one local. Yeah.
And there is a classic one in Arnos Vale, which is a massive European recognised cemetery in Bristol, just down the road from the.
I thought I recognised the name. I couldn't picture where.
Station. Yeah. And they wanted not only to have a fantastic cemetery, but they wanted to make money from it. I mean, many of the English famous Victorian cemeteries were set up as private businesses to make profit, and they never could. So they got taken over eventually by councils who subsidised them and this and the other. And they wanted to open, and the Spanish ambassador was visiting Bristol from London with his daughter. She then caught something horrible and died, and they were literally begged, can we bury your daughter here? Because not only was she a foreigner, so it sort of fulfilled that sort of wish, but she was quite knobby as well, because they wanted to attract the best and charge the
I
higher
see.
prices.
I was wondering where you were going with the word knobby, but I got you now, yes.
No, we then have the situation, of course, is that it was then also believed that when a cemetery eventually closes, because eventually you will run out of space, you will be full, and a deadline will come down, no more, and it was considered unlucky to be the last one to be buried as well. And the reasoning behind that is your spirit would linger until the next one was buried, and you go, tag, you're it, I'm off.
Oh, right, okay.
But if you're last, you're stuck.
Yeah.
So they used to get around that by burying a dog.
Right.
Yeah, which is different.
So is there... no, of course, we haven't reached the last one yet, but so where does this happen? Where has this happened?
It's happened in a number of cemeteries in London, across the north of England.
So you put
we
a
haven't
dog
got
in.
we haven't got there yet in Barry.
No,
but
I
of
know.
course,
Well.
we actually had our first interment was a foreigner. The 24th of October 1889. William Marra, an 18-year-old sailor. They birthed in Barry Dock, and he died from an accident there. So we buried him. Not in A1, as you would imagine, but in I1. Don't ask me why they started with I. Right. And it's unmarked, and it's very close to the chapel there. But it fulfilled the need for it to be a foreigner.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, you then got the records of the first 17 burials on the first page of the records, which we have in great detail in the cemetery and the council. And of the first 17 buried, two men had died of injuries around the docks, he being one, and the other 15 were all local children under the age of 5.
Good Lord.
Dying from common ailments and accidents and things.
Wow.
Child mortality being
yes, it was
horrible in those days,
absolutely rife. Wow. So early days, that's a bit depressing, isn't it? Early.
Yeah.
So in terms of that batch of children, I mean, was that related to an epidemic or something like smallpox?
Not really. No, we've looked at a few death certificates. It's a hell of a thing to have to order, but it's like, and you look through the Victorian terminology, but it's things like measles, TB, just things that would be very largely and probably quite easily treatable. And
these
nowadays.
days, absolutely.
No antibiotics in those days.
No, of course,
The standard of care was primitive.
Yeah, I did once. I mean, we're going slightly off topic, but there was there's a snippet hanging on a church wall. I can't remember which church it is in the Square Mile, one of the really old London churches, which has an extract from the registry of deaths.
Oh yes.
From I think it's something like 1606 or something like that, and the causes of death are
the
things
list
like
of mortality.
scared.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And other
fell from bell tower. One
and football. People dying of football.
Yes.
So I know they do get a bit off the wall sometimes when you dig into them. What about sort of other personal stories then? What about sort of Barry people?
Okay. Well, there's one story we do show. I mean, what happened was we were trying, my wife and I, to find stories of real people that would interest. So we went around in the early days looking for big monuments.
Yes.
And our theory behind that was, if you've got a big monument, it costs money.
Yeah.
Therefore, you had money. Therefore, you probably had more stories of interest and life to tell.
Yeah.
And there's a particular one, again, not far from the entrance. It's a beautiful stone. It's got the whole family in there. And we thought, that's nice. Let's research this one.
Yeah.
And we looked up the father, and we found that he was a coal trimmer.
Mm-hmm.
Very common job, but quite well paid in the docks. And to be honest, we couldn't find out much about him.
Yeah.
He didn't seem to be into politics or clubs or societies or sport or anything. He just seemed to be a good, hard-working family man, bringing up his family, and there you go.
Mm.
So we thought, well, let's look up the wife, and she just seemed to be a good, hard-working woman looking after the house and bringing up the kids, and great. And I was thinking, oh, it's a shame, it's such a nice stone, it would be nice to be able to tell a real story. And then we noticed that the daughter, Tilly, who had died, and there was pages about her in the papers.
Right.
And it was quite it's a sad story. She was a young, vivacious girl who worked for the council as a clerk. And in part-time, as a bit of an earner and a way of getting on, she used to give elocution lessons as well. I could do with that, but... So what happened was, it was towards the end of the First World War. She had gone down to Barry Dock railway station with a girlfriend, and it's to wave off a soldier back to barracks, ready to go back to the front.
Yeah.
We don't know if it was a boyfriend or a brother or just a school friend. We don't know. It doesn't give that detail. And if you think of the film The Railway Children, where they're always running along the platform, waving at the train excitedly, they did that. And one of them slipped, and both of them went between the train and the platform. Yeah. The friend was fine, but Tilly lost limbs and bits and lingered and died. Right. And I tell this because, quite simply, the whole town, virtually, it seemed, came out. It's probably one of the biggest funerals ever. Good grief. Because, of course, Dad's down the docks. Yeah. So all his friends.
So he knew everyone. Yeah.
She was with the council. Yeah. So the council did the right thing. She probably had her students with her elocution, her schoolmates, you name it. Yeah. But I suspect a lot of people came out because in the war, the bodies weren't coming home. Yeah. We know about the big cemeteries in France and Flanders and Turkey and everywhere else. You couldn't bring them back. It would cost too much, and also the body count would have frightened the people and seen as defeatist. So it's almost like they adopted her as one of their own,
a tokenistic outpouring of grief. Sort of absolutely, a channel for everyone's grief.
And whenever I tell that story and show it, I always get a few tears.
Yeah, I bet.
Because it's just, oh my God, and a life cut short. Sort of thing,
yes, absolutely. Oh, that's.
And people tell me that when they on the train and they stop at Barry Dock Station, it's like, ooh, Tilly. Yeah.
Well, because
it makes it more real and alive.
It's a remarkable thing. And again, we're going slightly off topic, but then I have form. Not a million miles away from here is Porthkerry Church. Yes. Where there are two graves for a drowned man, different drowned man from the 1800s. And the only reason why I'm flagging it up is because I'm connected with that church, and I frequently notice that someone is tending the grave that says a drowned man, 1836. Lovely. So they can't possibly know if they're descended from this person, but there is something about that grave that is striking a chord with maybe it's one person, maybe it's several people.
Porthkerry is interesting because at the start we were on about the difference between a cemetery and a graveyard.
Yes, well, you got both up there, of course.
Both there, you got the one attached to the church itself, which is the graveyard, and then you've got the...
Which is full, folks, don't ring in.
Yeah, and you've got the municipal cemetery, which is run by the Vale of Glamorgan Council, because Roos voted itself out of existence, and it's run by Barry Town Council on their behalf, because otherwise the Vale Council would have to employ people specifically. So we run it for a fee, and we do a good job. By the way, that's virtually full as well.
Is it? So no dying in Roos area, ladies and gentlemen.
The Council need to get their act together and supply the capital money to do the long overdue extension. Talking about your drowned man in 1836, we had a drowned man in 1915. And this is a fascinating story. I was up there one day doing an event, and a young man came up to me and he said, I am fascinated by the Lusitania.
Oh, right.
Which was torpedoed by the Germans in the First World War. And he said, I understand you have one of the victims buried here. And I looked at him and I said, first I've heard of it. Leave it with me. So sure enough, I went through the records and found out he was absolutely right.
Good Lord.
And the story was, of course, it was torpedoed off the southern coast of Ireland.
Yeah.
And there were bodies floating everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's a bad advert for the liner and their company. So they said literally to any ship passing, if you find a body, pick it up and bring it to your local port. And many of them were buried in various churchyards of villages all across the south of Ireland.
Yeah.
But there was a cola coming back from New York to Barry, and they picked up 2 bodies and brought them to Barry. And then there was the various inquests that were held locally. And the first one was a lady who was obviously very well to do, one of the passengers. She was covered in furs and jewellery, was very easily identifiable as an American heiress.
Mm-hmm.
So they embalmed her and sent her back to America.
Yeah.
The one that we have buried in our cemetery, they never could identify.
Ah.
And it was plainly a working man.
Right.
So they described him, colour of his hair, his teeth, his height, all that sort of stuff, what he was wearing, and they could not identify him. So he ended up being buried on the parish, shall I say, in other words, buried by the council.
Yeah.
And he was buried in a common grave, along with about 6 other people. And as a consequence, when you buy a grave off us, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This was a common grave, so it's ours.
Right.
So, without any hassle at all on finding this out and confirming it with all the records, I could put a stone on it.
Oh, right.
So I made a little case to the council,
Yeah.
and they said, well, how much is that going to cost, Nick? And I said, I'm told about 1,000. So we went to one of the local stonemasons who said, I'll do it half price if I can put a picture of the Lusitania on the front.
No.
And we went, yes, please.
Wow.
But the only thing else I insisted upon, so it's there, an unnamed victim of
yeah.
the Lusitania, picture of the Lusitania. On the back, it's got the names of all the other people in the common grave. And it's a right mixture
that's
of people.
brilliant.
Because they should remember
Of
as
course
well.
they would, and that's
we actually
fantastic.
had it unveiled, amazingly, on the exact date of the centenary of the sinking.
We have been talking about the cemeteries of Barry and the people who are buried there and some amazing stories. And the stories ain't over yet, ladies and gentlemen. We've still got more to come. So I think quite an obvious question to ask you is, do we have anyone buried in Merthyr Dyfan who is famous?
We've got a number, and the nice thing is that the town council have started marking the graves, because some don't have stones.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So it's just a patch of ground.
Yeah.
But they're there. And they've started marking them with nice little bilingual plaques giving a history and a picture of the person. And it's part of a new developing walk we're doing, which helped us actually last year to get the Green Heritage Award.
Oh, right.
It's the only place in the Vale with it, and one of only about 9 or 10 in the whole of Wales.
That's fantastic.
So we're on a par with St Fagans, the Folk Museum, Margam Park, places like that.
Brilliant.
So our cemetery, folks, it's
something to be proud
famous,
of.
Yeah. No, the some of the famous people. I'm sure most people have heard of Gareth Jones.
Oh, the journalist.
The journalist, Lloyd George's spy, basically. And we love the story because Barry, born and bred, from a well-to-do famous family in Barry, he had learnt Russian and Ukrainian from his mother's knee because she'd gone out as a nanny to Hughes, the steel industrialist in Donetsk, in present-day Ukraine, and which is being fought over now, of course. And he went on with his English and his Welsh, and he became a great journalist. And he started, really, he was the only foreign journalist on the plane with Hitler in his rise to power as he was electioneering across Germany. And he was reporting back to Lloyd George and everyone that listen, watch this guy, he's dangerous. And he was right, of course. Yeah. But he later went on to Ukraine, which Stalin had starved out in the Holodomor, which is 90 years ago this year. And he was being told, there's no famine in the Ukraine, you're being misinformed. But he managed to sneak off, and there's a good film out on it now, Mr. Jones.
Yeah, and Martin Shipton's book as well.
Absolutely. And we had him up for an event up there. I'll tell you about that in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he snuck around the villages and saw the death and the dismay there, and reported back. And eventually was killed by, we believe, what became the KGB when he was in Mongolia, and his ashes came back in the family plot. Last year, we had a wonderful donation to us of a beautiful bronze plaque, which is in the chapel there, from the Canadian Friends of the Ukraine, because they realised what such an important guy this was. And we actually had the Ukrainian ambassador come along to unveil it. And my God, he knew about Gareth Jones.
Yeah.
And there are streets in Ukraine today dedicated to him. And hell of a man. And a life cut short, of course. We've got Jimmy Wilde, of course, the great boxer who spent his last years in Barry, and he's buried up here, and we've marked his grave. We've got 5 at the moment that we've marked. We're going to do another 3 or 4 this year, and another 3 or 4 after that, and it will form its own little trail.
Oh, right.
And it's a good mixture. I mean, at the moment we've got an educationalist, a journalist, a boxer, a politician. Always have a politician.
Oh, better have.
And who else have we got up there? We have a composer. Yeah, Margaret Lindsay Williams.
Oh,
the painter to the stars. She painted royalty, American presidents, you name it, and made a very good living out of it.
Fantastic.
Yeah. And in fact, we're helping someone at the moment to get a stone on her grave because it's unmarked.
Right.
We've managed.
Good Lord.
He's managed to track down. He's a good man. He's managed to track down the last living relative to literally get permission. To which they said, yes, I think it's an old lady in a nursing home in Canada.
Good Lord.
So there's a bit of work involved in that.
It's unbelievable she hadn't got a stone in the first place, though. I mean, that's just...
She put in her will that she wanted to come back from London to Barry.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Perhaps she didn't want one, or it just didn't happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes, of course, you have wooden crosses.
Yes. Oh, which just
rot and go, and So yeah.
Okay. So you do these walks, which sound fascinating.
Yeah.
So, give us a flavour. What do you get when you join on one of your walks? We do a
number of walks in the cemetery. We do a woman's walk, so that's famous and interesting women, and women's groups especially appreciate that. We always end with a man, though, in the story, and he was a former chairman of the council, and he basically was on the licensing committee that gave out driving licenses. Well before we had what we have now, the council did it. And it used to be fairly automatic. You didn't even have to pass a test, of course, in those days. You applied for a driving licence and got one. And I say to the ladies I take around on these walks, we're going to finish with a man, And they think, oh, that's a bit, we've done more women's. So we get to him and we go, this application came in front from a woman.
Right.
For a driving licence. We're talking cars now, not sort of horse and traps and things. And he refused her because basically she should have been at home with her husband.
Oh, I see. Right,
the children.
That old chestnut.
And the ladies then, on hearing this, go and words to that effect. So that's quite interesting. We do the 1919 Race Riots walk up there, which is incredibly popular, and it's amazing what an effect that has on people.
Yeah.
We do quirky and weird stories about people as well. I keep getting asked to do a ghost walk around Halloween. We don't do that, folks.
Right.
We don't do that. This is a place of reverence and respect, and we don't do that.
Yeah.
And like I said, we largely stick to the older parts of the cemetery where those tales are there to be
Of course.
told.
Yeah.
But of course, we do have interesting people who have died far more recently. But I'll leave that, I think, to the next generation to pick up.
To pay their respect, to mark what they contribute. Yeah. So, how often do you do the walks then? How regular are they?
As often as I can.
Right. Okay.
We have by the time I think you hear this, we'll have had an open day up there where I'm doing a number of walks. But we will do the 1991 every year, and we do that 2 or 3 times. That's very popular. Basically, if you just watch out for our Facebook or our Twitter. We advertise those, and they're free. Please come along and see a side of the town that you wouldn't know. I mean, when I was a lad, the idea of going into a cemetery would have freaked me. I would have not wanted to go anywhere near it. But the cemetery we have in Barry, we have a green flag. We're green. We have a pond there which attracts insects, which are great for the birds. So, and we have all the different species of trees. We're trying to be green. We're trying to be a beautiful place and a serene place to visit and to spend your eternal rest in, sort of thing. So it's a beautiful place, and the chapel is worth visiting as well.
Wow.
Can I finish with the story about the chapel?
Please do.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it was built 4 years after the cemetery opened, and they went out to local builders, and one was selected, and he came with a price, and he supplied the clerk of works, and he finished it on time, and he finished it to budget, and it cost £610. About 15 years ago, we had to sort the roof out after all these years, get the electrics in, get everything sorted, get everything up to modern spec and everything. And it cost us £165,000, which is why we love showing it off, because the people of Barry paid for it. Yeah. But the story I love is the builder. He was told by his men, "We're done, we're finished, it's ready, come up and have a look." He went up, had a look, looked at the inside, thought, lovely job, looked at the outside, stepped back, twisted his ankle on a curb, in fact broke his ankle. He was rushed to his house, which is 6 doors down from where I live.
Oh, right, okay.
Now, that's local history, folks.
That is local. It doesn't get any more local than that.
Yeah.
Absolutely remarkable. Nic, it's been a total delight to talk to you today about our cemeteries. Who'd have thought you could get an hour's radio programme?
Oh, I've got more than that.
But it is an incredible bit of our history, and often overlooked. People make enough fuss about churches and forget completely about the relevance of cemeteries.
The people who built our town are there.
That's where they are. Yeah, that's where you'll find them now. So no, it's fantastic, and really appreciate you you coming in to talk to us. So our next program goes out on the 28th of August. I've yet to decide what that's going to be about, but it's going to be good. You know it is. So look, from me and from Nic and from everybody in the Bro Radio History team. So that's me and Nic. Thank you very much, and we'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.